The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our downtown Atlanta penthouse, each drop echoing the accusations my husband had been hurling at me for the past hour. I stood in our designer kitchen, the one featured in Southern Living just last year, gripping the marble countertop so hard my knuckles ached. I'm Simone Carter, and at 34 years old, I thought I'd figured out how to navigate the world. MBA from Emory, 10 years climbing the corporate ladder at a Fortune 500 tech company, married to Marcus Carter, one of Atlanta's rising stars in commercial real estate. We were the couple everyone envied. Beautiful home in Buckhead, matching luxury cars, invitations to every gala and charity event that mattered. From the outside, we were living the dream. From the inside, I was suffocating. You're being ridiculous, Simone. Marcus paced our kitchen, his expensive suit somehow still crisp despite the late hour and his obvious agitation. Throwing away a 6-figure salary and stock options to start some boutique consulting firm? Do you hear yourself? You sound delusional. I'd been trying to explain my decision for weeks now, but tonight I'd finally made it official. Turned in my resignation, signed the paperwork to incorporate my own business. Scarter Consulting, a firm focused on helping minority-owned businesses scale and succeed, combining my tech expertise with my passion for economic equity. It's not ridiculous, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. I've been planning this for 2 years. I have clients lined up. I've saved enough to cover expenses for the first year. And I have a clear business plan. A business plan. He laughed, sharp and cruel. Baby, I see business plans every day. Real ones, from serious people with actual resources. What you have is a hobby you're pretending is a career. The dismissal in his tone made something crack inside me. This wasn't new. Marcus had always been condescending about my ambitions outside of my corporate job. But hearing him reduce 2 years of careful planning, research, and preparation to a hobby felt like a physical blow. I've already landed 3 contracts, I said quietly. All signed. All paid deposits. This isn't a fantasy, Marcus. It's happening. 3 contracts. He stopped pacing, turned to face me fully. You know what I closed last month? A $12 million mixed-use development. 1 deal, Simone. 1. That's real money. That's real success. Your little consulting contracts are what? 50,000? 100? That's pocket change. Not everyone measures success by deal size. No, unsuccessful people don't measure it by deal size, he shot back. Successful people understand that revenue matters. Impact matters. You're going to be scrambling for clients, working twice as hard for half the money, and for what? To prove some point about independence? I took a deep breath, tried a different approach. Marcus, this matters to me. Helping businesses that look like me, that come from communities like where I grew up in Southwest Atlanta. That means something. It's not just about money. Everything is about money, Simone. That's the lesson you clearly haven't learned yet. He moved closer, his voice dropping into that patronizing tone I'd come to hate. Look, I get it. You're having some kind of midlife crisis. I'm 34. And you want to feel like you're making a difference or whatever. But you're not thinking clearly. You have a great job, great salary, great benefits. We have a lifestyle to maintain. This house alone costs us $8,000 a month in mortgage and maintenance. You think your little startup is going to cover that? My salary isn't the only income we have, I pointed out. You make 3 times what I do. Which is exactly my point. His voice rose again. You can afford to have this little consulting business as a side project because I'm carrying us financially. You want to quit your job and play entrepreneur? Fine. But don't pretend you're actually going to build something real. You're going to fail, come crawling back to corporate America in 6 months, and we'll have lost ground we can't get back. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction that I would fail, hit me like ice water. This was my husband. The man who'd promised to support me, to be my partner, to believe in me. And he was standing in our kitchen telling me I would fail before I'd even started. You don't believe in me at all, do you? I said softly. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his precisely cut hair. Simone, it's not about belief, it's about reality. The statistics on startups are brutal. 90% fail in the first year. You have no experience running a business, no real network outside of corporate America, no. I have an MBA. So do a million other people. An MBA doesn't teach you how to hustle for clients or make payroll or handle the 1,000 daily fires that come with running a business. You've been sheltered in corporate America your whole career, with HR departments and IT support and expense accounts. You have no idea what it's actually like out there. Each word was designed to undermine, to diminish, to make me doubt myself. And the worst part was, some of it was landing. I hadn't run my own business before. The statistics were brutal. I would be leaving behind security and structure and a clear career path. But I'd also spent 10 years watching other people build their visions while I executed theirs. 10 years making other people wealthy while I collected a salary. 10 years playing it safe while my dreams got smaller and more distant. I'm doing this, Marcus, I said firmly. With or without your support. He stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You really mean that? I do. Then you're a fool. The words came out cold, final. And when this fails, not if, when, don't expect me to pick up the pieces. You'll never make it without me, Simone. Without my support, my connections, my resources. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, and you're too stubborn to see it. The room fell silent except for the rain. We stood there, husband and wife, and I saw our marriage clearly for the first time in years, the imbalance of it. The way Marcus had always needed to be the successful one, the important one, the one with the power. My ambitions threatened that dynamic, and he couldn't tolerate it. You know what? I said quietly. I think I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on yours. His jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired of making myself smaller so you can feel bigger. I'm tired of apologizing for wanting more. I'm tired of being married to someone who sees my dreams as competition instead of celebration. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. For the first time in a long time, I'm being completely honest. I moved toward the bedroom. I'm going to pack a bag. I'll stay at my sister's for a few days while we both cool down. Simone. His voice stopped me at the doorway. If you walk out that door over this, if you choose this fantasy business over our marriage, there's no coming back from that. I turned to look at him one last time. I'm not choosing my business over our marriage, Marcus. I'm choosing myself. There's a difference. I packed quickly. Clothes, laptop, essential documents. Marcus didn't follow me, didn't try to stop me. When I walked back through the kitchen with my suitcase, he was pouring himself a scotch, his back to me. You'll be back in a week, he said without turning around. When reality hits and you realize you can't actually do this. I didn't respond. Just walked out into the rain, threw my bag in my car, and drove away from the life I'd built with a man who'd never truly believed in me. My sister Jasmine lived in a modest townhouse in East Atlanta, a world away from Buckhead's mansions and pretension. She opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. He said I'd never make it without him, I told her later, sitting at her kitchen table with tea neither of us was drinking. Jazz was a nurse, 3 years older than me, and had never particularly liked Marcus. He said I was going to fail and come crawling back in 6 months. Marcus is an ass, Jazz said bluntly. Always has been. But Simone, are you sure about this? Leaving your job and your marriage in the same week is a lot. I know. I wrapped my hands around the mug, seeking its warmth. But Jazz, I can't keep living like this. Every time I have an idea or a dream, Marcus tears it down. He needs me to be less than him, to need him, to depend on him. And I've been letting him do it for years. What about the business? Is it real? Or were you just trying to prove something? I pulled out my laptop, showed her the contracts I'd signed, The business plan I'd refined over countless late nights. The market research that showed a genuine need for what I was offering. It's real. I've been planning this for 2 years. I have 3 clients already. A tech startup in Old Fourth Ward, a restaurant group expanding into new locations, and a logistics company looking to scale. All minority-owned, all needing exactly what I can provide. Jazz studied the documents, her expression shifting from concern to something like respect. Damn, sis. You really did your homework. Marcus doesn't think it's enough. Marcus needs you to fail so he can feel superior. Don't let his insecurity become your limitation. She closed the laptop, met my eyes directly. But real talk. Are you prepared for how hard this is going to be? Starting a business while going through a separation? Because that's what's happening here, right? You're not going back to him. The question hung in the air. Was I going back? Could I go back after what he'd said, after how he'd looked at me with such certainty that I would fail? No, I said finally. I'm not going back. Not unless something fundamental changes. And I don't think Marcus is capable of that kind of change. Then you need to get a lawyer. Protect yourself financially. That house, your savings, all of it. You need to make sure you're covered. She was right. But the thought of actually filing for divorce, of making this permanent, felt overwhelming. I'd been with Marcus for 8 years, married for 5. He was woven into every part of my life, my identity, my future plans. Except he wasn't really, was he? Because my actual future plans, the business I wanted to build, the impact I wanted to make, those had no place for a partner who undermined me at every turn. One thing at a time, I said. First, I make this business work, prove to myself that I can do this. Then I'll figure out the marriage. In that order? Jazz raised an eyebrow. In that order. She nodded slowly. Okay, then let's talk strategy. You've got 3 clients. You need at least 6 more to make this sustainable, right? What's your plan for getting them? We stayed up until 3 in the morning, Jazz helping me refine my pitch, identify potential clients, plan my first 90 days as a business owner. She might have been a nurse, but she understood people and hustle in ways my MBA had never taught me. By the time I finally collapsed on her guest bed, my head was spinning with plans and possibilities. Marcus's words echoed in my mind. You'll never make it without me. But instead of crushing me, they ignited something fierce and determined. I'd show him. I'd show everyone who'd ever doubted me. I'd build something real, something meaningful, something that mattered. And I'd do it completely on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Come home. We can talk about this rationally when you're not being emotional. I deleted it without responding. There would be time for difficult conversations later. Tonight, I needed to focus on the only thing that mattered. The first day of the rest of my life. The rain had stopped by morning. I woke early, habit from years of corporate life, and found Jazz already up and ready for her shift at Grady Hospital. Coffee's made, she said, tossing me her spare key. Stay as long as you need. Mi casa es su casa. After she left, I sat at her small kitchen table and opened my laptop. Day 1 of Scarter Consulting. No office, no employees, no safety net. Just me, my skills, and a determination to prove that Marcus Carter had been catastrophically wrong about his wife. I pulled up my client list and started drafting an email introducing myself as their new consultant, outlining next steps, setting up initial meetings. Professional, confident, giving no hint of the personal chaos swirling beneath the surface. My phone rang. Marcus again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Simone, you're being childish. This whole thing is childish. Come home, quit this nonsense with the consulting company, and we'll pretend this never happened. I'll even support you looking for a new corporate job if you're that unhappy. But this startup fantasy has to end. Call me. I deleted the voicemail and blocked his number. Not forever, maybe. But for now, I needed space from his voice, his judgment, his absolute certainty that I was making a mistake. My first client meeting was scheduled for 2 that afternoon. I spent the morning preparing, reviewing their business model, researching their market, developing preliminary recommendations. This was where I thrived, analyzing systems, identifying inefficiencies, creating strategies for growth. The meeting went perfectly. 3 hours of productive discussion, genuine excitement from the client, and a clear path forward for our work together. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years at my corporate job. Genuine satisfaction, purpose, joy. My phone buzzed with an email from another potential client, referred by one of my existing contracts. They wanted to set up a consultation call. I responded immediately, professionalism masking my excitement. Client number 4, possibly. The momentum was building. Maybe I could actually do this. That night, back at Jazz's place, I let myself feel the full weight of what I'd done. Left my husband, quit my job, bet everything on my ability to build something from nothing. The fear threatened to overwhelm me, but underneath it was something stronger. Determination. Marcus had said I'd never make it without him. He'd been so certain, so dismissive of my abilities and ambition. That dismissal had revealed something crucial. He'd never actually believed in me. Maybe he never had. And if he'd never believed in me, if he'd always seen me as lesser, dependent, incapable, then what exactly had I lost by leaving? The answer was clear. Nothing I actually valued. Nothing real. I pulled out my journal, started writing goals. 90-day targets, revenue projections, client acquisition strategies. But also personal goals. File for divorce, find my own place, build a life that was mine alone. 6 months, I decided. I'd give myself 6 months to prove that I could make this work. 6 months to build a sustainable business, establish financial independence, and become the version of myself I'd been suppressing for years. And if Marcus was still telling people I'd never make it without him, well, I'd just have to prove him spectacularly wrong. The first month was brutal. Not in the ways Marcus had predicted. I secured 2 more clients within 3 weeks, bringing my total to 5, but in the grinding reality of running every aspect of a business alone. Accounting, marketing, client management, actual consulting work, business development, all of it fell on me. I moved out of Jazz's guest room and into a modest 1-bedroom apartment in Midtown, close enough to my clients but significantly cheaper than the Buckhead lifestyle Marcus and I had maintained. The apartment was 1/3 the size of our penthouse, with builder-grade everything and a view of a parking lot. It was perfect. Marcus called from different numbers, trying to get around my block. Left voicemails that progressed from patronizing to angry to pleading. "Simone, I saw you signed a lease. You're really doing this? Throwing away everything we built? Your little company has been incorporated for 3 weeks and you're already struggling. I can see it. Come home before you embarrass us both." I talked to Richard Chen. You remember Richard from my firm? He said you approached his investment group for consulting work and they passed. Maybe that's a sign you should reconsider this whole thing. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on what I could control, delivering exceptional results for my existing clients and building my reputation one success at a time. My tech startup client, a company called Apex Innovations run by 2 brilliant engineers named Terrell and Aisha, was my first major win. They'd created an app for connecting freelance tradespeople with residential customers, think Uber for plumbers and electricians, but they were struggling to scale beyond Atlanta. I spent 2 weeks analyzing their operations, identifying bottlenecks, and developing a comprehensive growth strategy. When I presented my recommendations, Terrell actually stood up and hugged me. "This is exactly what we needed," he said, reviewing the 50-page report I'd prepared. "We've been so focused on the tech that we neglected the business fundamentals. You just gave us a roadmap for the next 2 years." "That's what I'm here for," I said, feeling that same rush of satisfaction. "Now let's execute it." Within 6 weeks of implementing my strategies, Apex had expanded into 2 new markets and increased their customer base by 40%. They referred me to 3 other startups in their network. Word was spreading. The restaurant group, Southern Roots Hospitality, was a tougher challenge. They were trying to expand from 3 locations to 10, but their operational systems couldn't handle the growth. The owner, a 50-year-old woman named Patricia Monroe, who'd built her business from a single food truck, was resistant to change. "I've been doing it my way for 20 years, she said during one particularly tense meeting. "Why should I listen to someone half my age tell me how to run my business?" It was a fair question, and it reminded me uncomfortably of Marcus's dismissals. But I'd learned something in my corporate years. Data doesn't lie. "Mrs. Monroe," I said, pulling up the spreadsheets I'd created. "Your first 3 restaurants have a 92% customer satisfaction rate and healthy profit margins. But you're personally involved in every decision. Menu changes, hiring, scheduling, vendor relationships. That worked when you had 3 locations. It's not going to work when you have 10. So you want me to just hand over control to strangers? I want you to build systems that allow your restaurants to run successfully without you micromanaging every detail. Standardize your operations, develop manager training programs, create decision-making frameworks that maintain quality while allowing autonomy. You'll still be in control of the vision and strategy, but you'll have freed yourself from the day-to-day operations that are going to burn you out." She studied the data for a long moment. Then, "Show me how." Over the next 2 months, we completely restructured her operations, built out training manuals, implemented new technology systems, hired and trained regional managers. Patricia fought me on almost every change, but she also respected results. And the results were undeniable. Her restaurants ran smoother, her staff was happier, and she finally had time to actually work on expansion instead of just keeping her head above water. "You saved my business," she told me when we opened location number 4 right on schedule. "Maybe my sanity, too." "You saved your business," I corrected. "I just gave you the tools." "Don't be modest. You're good at this, Simone. Really good." The praise meant more than I expected. Marcus had spent years telling me I wasn't ready, wasn't experienced enough, wouldn't succeed. But my clients saw something different. They saw someone who delivered results, who understood their challenges, who combined strategic thinking with genuine care for their success. By month 3, I had 8 active clients and a waiting list. I'd hired my first employee, a brilliant recent Spelman grad named Kennedy, who handled administrative work and basic market research. My revenue was steady, not spectacular, but enough to cover my expenses and start building a reserve. I was making it. Actually making it. Jazz noticed the change in me. "You're smiling again," she said one Sunday when I came over for dinner. "Real smiles. Not the performance ones you used to do with Marcus." "It's been 3 months," I said, helping her chop vegetables. 3 months since I walked out. Sometimes I can't believe I actually did it. "Any regrets?" I thought about it honestly. "About the business?" "None. It's hard, but it's mine. I'm building something real. About Marcus." I paused. "I regret the years I wasted trying to be smaller so he could feel bigger. But leaving? No. That was the best decision I ever made. He's been telling people you're going to fail, you know. That you're in over your head and it's only a matter of time before you come crawling back." I set down the knife, turned to face her. "How do you know that?" Tamika heard it from her husband's business partner. Marcus was at some networking event, apparently, running his mouth. "Said you were having a breakdown, that your little consulting business was a vanity project, that you'd be back in corporate America by summer." The words stung, but they also ignited something fierce in me. Marcus was actively undermining me, trying to damage my reputation before I could establish it. "Let him talk," I said finally. "My results will speak louder than his gossip." But privately, I was worried. Atlanta's business community was smaller than people thought, and Marcus had connections everywhere. If he was poisoning the well, telling potential clients I was unstable or unprofessional, It could seriously damage my ability to grow. I needed something bigger, something that would establish my credibility beyond doubt. A client or a success story so significant that Marcus's whispers would be drowned out by facts. The opportunity came from an unexpected source. I was working late at my apartment, which had become my office, bedroom, and everything else, when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Simone Carter?" The voice was female, professional, slightly familiar. "Speaking. This is Destiny Williams. We met briefly at the Emory Business School alumni mixer 2 years ago. I'm the CFO of Williams Development Group." I sat up straighter. Williams Development Group was huge, one of the largest minority-owned real estate development firms in the Southeast. Revenue in the hundreds of millions, projects across 5 states. "Of course, I remember. What can I do for you, Ms. Williams?" "Please call me Destiny. I've been hearing things about your consulting work. Terrell Hayes from Apex Innovations is my nephew. He won't stop talking about what you did for his company. Terrell and Aisha are brilliant. I just helped them organize their brilliance. Modest. I like that. Listen, Simone, we're in a situation here. My father started this company 40 years ago, built it from nothing. He's been trying to retire for the past 3 years, but every time he steps back, things start falling apart. We've brought in consultants before, big firms, expensive names, but they don't understand our business or our values. They try to make us into something we're not. What are you looking for? Someone who understands what it means to build something real. Someone who can help us transition from a founder-led company to a professionally managed enterprise without losing the culture and values that made us successful. Terrell said you did something similar with Patricia Monroe's restaurants. My heart was pounding. This was exactly the kind of high-profile client that could establish my firm as a serious player. But it was also terrifying. Williams Development Group was operating at a scale I'd never worked with before. I'd need to understand your operations in detail before I could commit to anything. I said carefully. But yes, I'm interested in exploring how I might help. Can you come to our office tomorrow, 10 a.m.? I'd like you to meet with our leadership team, see the scope of what we're dealing with. I'll be there. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then I called Kennedy. "Boss? It's almost 10 p.m. Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. I need you to pull together everything you can find on Williams Development Group. Their projects, their leadership, their financial performance, any press coverage, everything. I need to know this company inside and out by tomorrow morning." "On it. Can I ask why?" "Because we might have just landed the biggest client of our career." We worked until 3 a.m. and building a comprehensive profile of Williams Development. I studied their projects, their values, their challenges, prepared questions, anticipated concerns, developed preliminary thoughts on how I might approach their transition challenge. The Williams Development Group offices were in Midtown, a gleaming modern building that screamed success. I dressed in my best suit, not the designer labels from my Marcus days, but a sharp professional look I'd found at a consignment shop, and walked in with my shoulders back and my head high. Destiny Williams was 48, elegant and sharp, with an MBA from Wharton and a reputation for being brilliant with numbers. She met me in the lobby personally, which surprised me. "Simone, thank you for coming on short notice. My father's here too. Wanted to meet you himself." Lawrence Williams was a legend in Atlanta's black business community. Started with a single duplex renovation in the 80s, built an empire through smart investments and unwavering values. He was 72 now, still sharp, but clearly tired. "Ms. Carter," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "My daughter tells me you're the real deal. That true? I deliver results for my clients, Mr. Williams. Whether that makes me the real deal is for them to decide." He laughed, a deep sound that filled the conference room. "Diplomatic. I like that. Come on, let's talk about our problems." The meeting lasted 4 hours. They laid out everything: the succession challenges, the operational inefficiencies, The cultural tensions between old guard employees and new professional managers, the family dynamics complicating decision-making. It was complex, messy, and exactly the kind of challenge I loved. "Here's my honest assessment," I said when they finished. "You don't need another consultant telling you to implement best practices or reorganize your reporting structure. You've heard that before, and it hasn't worked because it doesn't address the real issue." "Which is?" Destiny leaned forward. "Trust. Your founder-led culture was built on Mr. Williams's personal relationships, his hands-on involvement, his instincts and experience. You can't replace that with org charts and procedures. You have to build new trust structures, systems that maintain your values while allowing professional management. It's about evolution, not revolution." Lawrence was nodding slowly. "Keep talking." I spent the next hour outlining my approach. Not a generic consulting playbook, but a customized strategy that honored their history while preparing for their future. I pulled examples from my work with Patricia's restaurants, showed how I'd helped her maintain her culture while scaling operations. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then Lawrence stood up and extended his hand. "When can you start? I need to see your full financials and operational data before I commit to a timeline. And I need to be transparent. I'm a small firm, just me and one employee. If you need an army of consultants, I'm not the right fit." "Big consulting firms sent us armies," Destiny said. "Charged us millions and changed nothing that mattered. We don't want an army, Simone. We want someone who actually gives a damn about getting this right." "Then let's talk terms." We negotiated for another hour. The contract they offered was substantial. 6 months of work, with a fee structure that would triple my revenue. It would require me to hire more help, to scale up faster than I'd planned. But it was also the opportunity of a lifetime. I signed the contract that afternoon. Walking out of their building, I felt like I was floating. This was real. This was happening. I'd gone from 5 clients and scraping by to working with one of the most respected companies in the region. In 3 months, I'd built something that could actually grow into the vision I'd always had. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. It was Marcus. "Heard you're meeting with Williams Development. Don't embarrass yourself, Simone. They're serious people with serious business, way out of your league." For a moment, the old doubt crept in. What if he was right? What if I'd gotten lucky with my first few clients but wasn't ready for this level? What if I failed spectacularly and proved Marcus right about everything? Then I thought about Terrell and Aisha's success, about Patricia's expansion, about the waiting list of clients who wanted to work with me, about Destiny and Lawrence Williams trusting me with their legacy. I typed back, "Just signed the contract, 6-month engagement. Appreciate your concern, but I've got this." Then I blocked that number too. That evening, I took Jazz out for dinner at a nice restaurant, not Marcus-level fancy, but nice. A celebration. "To 3 months of Scarter Consulting," Jazz said, raising her glass. "And to proving that asshole wrong about everything. To building something real," I countered. "That's what this is really about. Not proving Marcus wrong, but proving myself right." "Can't it be both?" I laughed. "Yeah, it can definitely be both." Over dinner, I told her about the Williams contract, about the challenge ahead, about my plans to hire 2 more consultants to help handle the workload. "You're really doing it," Jazz said, her voice full of something like wonder. "You're building exactly what you said you would." "I'm trying. It's still early, still fragile. But yeah, I think I'm actually doing it." "What about Marcus? Divorce proceedings?" I'd been avoiding that question for months. "I need to file. I know I do. But I've been so focused on the business. Simone, you can't put it off forever. The longer you wait, the more complicated it gets. And you know Marcus. He's probably already talking to lawyers, figuring out how to protect his assets." She was right. I'd been in denial, hoping somehow we could just separate without the legal mess. But that was naive. Marcus would fight for everything, try to claim my business was marital property, make the whole process as painful as possible. I'll call a lawyer tomorrow, I promised, after I get Kennedy started on the Williams project. Tonight? Jazz insisted. You'll call tonight. I know a great family law attorney. She's tough, fair, and she doesn't take crap from egotistical men. Perfect for dealing with Marcus. She gave me the number, and I made the call right there from the restaurant. Left a voicemail requesting a consultation. One more step toward fully closing the door on my old life. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. I hired 2 experienced consultants, Michael, who'd left corporate America for similar reasons as me, and Yolanda, a brilliant strategist who'd been freelancing but wanted something more stable. Together, we dove into the Williams project. It was challenging in ways I hadn't anticipated. Family businesses are always complex, but when you add in a 40-year legacy, hundreds of employees, and millions of dollars in ongoing projects, every decision had massive implications. But it was also rewarding in ways I'd never experienced in corporate America. We weren't just optimizing systems or increasing efficiency. We were helping preserve a legacy while preparing it for the future. We were ensuring that Mr. Williams's life work would continue to thrive long after he retired. The divorce proceedings started ugly and got worse. Marcus fought everything, tried to claim my business was built on his financial support during our marriage, demanded half of my future earnings, even tried to get alimony despite making significantly more than I did. But Jazz's lawyer recommendation, attorney Renee Mason, was everything promised. She methodically demolished every one of Marcus's arguments, documented his financial abuse and controlling behavior, and made it clear that I'd left with nothing but my skills and determination. Your husband is learning a painful lesson, Renee told me after one particularly brutal court session. He thought you were dependent on him, that you'd fail without his support. Watching you succeed is killing him more than the divorce itself. I'm not doing this to hurt him, I said honestly. I'm doing this because it's right, because I deserve better. I know, but it's still satisfying to watch him realize how wrong he was about you. It was month 6 when everything came together in a way I couldn't have imagined. The Williams Development Group transition was going brilliantly. We'd implemented new management structures that maintained their culture while allowing professional operations. Mr. Williams was actually starting to step back, trusting the systems we'd built. Destiny was thriving in her new role as CEO, and the company was stronger than ever. They were so pleased with the results that they referred me to 2 other major clients, a manufacturing company and a healthcare services group, both looking for similar organizational transformation work. My firm had grown to 5 full-time employees plus several contractors. We'd moved out of my apartment and into actual office space in West Midtown. Revenue was strong, reputation growing, future looking bright. And then I got the call that changed everything. Simone, this is Destiny. Do you have a minute? Always. What's up? We're looking at a property acquisition, mixed-use development in Buckhead, prime location. But here's the thing. It's currently owned by Carter Development Group, your ex-husband's firm. My heart stopped. Marcus's company is selling a property? Not just a property, their flagship building. The one they developed 3 years ago, the one that was supposed to establish them as major players. Word is they over-leveraged, the market shifted, and they're facing serious cash flow problems. It's going to foreclosure if they can't find a buyer fast. I couldn't speak for a moment. Marcus's crown jewel, the project he'd been so proud of, was failing. The same Marcus who'd told me I'd never make it without him was now losing the very thing he'd built his reputation on. Why are you telling me this? I asked carefully. Because we want to buy it, and I want you to know before we make the offer, in case it's complicated for you. I thought about Marcus's words that rainy night 6 months ago. You'll never make it without me. Thought about him telling people I was having a breakdown, that my business was a vanity project, that I'd fail and come crawling back. Thought about every dismissal, every condescension, every moment he'd made me feel small, so he could feel big. It's not complicated, I said firmly. Make the offer. And Destiny? When you close the deal, I want to be there. You sure about that? Absolutely certain. 3 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of what used to be Marcus's flagship property, watching the Williams Development Group team finalize the acquisition. The building was beautiful. Marcus had always had good taste, but it was also a monument to his overconfidence. He'd borrowed heavily, assumed the market would keep rising, and when it didn't, his house of cards collapsed. Marcus arrived for the final closing meeting looking diminished. His suit was still expensive, but he'd lost weight, had shadows under his eyes. He froze when he saw me. Simone, what are you doing here? I'm the consultant for the acquiring company, I said calmly. I helped them evaluate the property and structure the deal. The color drained from his face. You're working with Williams? Have been for 6 months. This is just one of several major projects we're handling for them. He looked around the lobby, his lobby, the one he'd designed and built and bragged about, really seeing the Williams Development Group signage for the first time, understanding what it meant. 6 months, he repeated. 6 months ago, you were living in your sister's guest room. That's right. 6 months ago, you told me I'd never make it without you, that I'd fail and come crawling back. How's that prediction working out? He struggled for words. You did this on purpose. You knew we were in trouble, and you swooped in. I didn't know anything until 3 weeks ago when Destiny told me about the opportunity. Your financial problems are your own making, Marcus. I had nothing to do with that. But you're here, rubbing it in my face. No, I said firmly. I'm here because this is my job, because I'm a consultant for a company making a major acquisition, and my presence adds value to their transaction. Your ego isn't my concern anymore. Destiny emerged from the conference room, saw Marcus and me facing off, and quickly assessed the situation. Mr. Carter, we're ready for you. Simone, thank you for your work on this project. We'll handle the closing from here. I nodded, started to walk away, but Marcus's voice stopped me. I was wrong, he said quietly. About you, about your business, about everything. You did make it. You made it without me, and you probably made it because of leaving me. I'm sorry. I turned back to face him. The apology was too little, too late. But it was also human. Real. The first honest thing he'd said to me in years. Thank you for saying that, I said. I hope you figure out whatever you need to figure out, Marcus. I really do. But my success isn't about you, proving you wrong or making you sorry. It's about me finally believing in myself enough to build what I always could have built, if I hadn't been trying to make myself smaller for your comfort. I walked out of that building with my head high, leaving Marcus and our past behind. Outside, the Atlanta sun was bright, the spring air warm with possibility. My phone buzzed. Kennedy, texting about a potential new client inquiry. Michael, asking about staffing for the healthcare services project. Yolanda, sending me revised financial projections that showed we'd exceeded our 6-month revenue targets by 40%. This was my life now. Challenging, demanding, completely my own. Built on nothing but my skills, my determination, and my refusal to accept anyone's limitations on what I could achieve. 6 months ago, Marcus had said I'd never make it without him. Today, my company had essentially bought his house. But more importantly, I'd bought my own freedom, built my own success, and proven to myself that I was capable of far more than I'd ever allowed myself to believe. That was worth more than any property acquisition or business victory. That was everything. The Williams Development acquisition of Marcus's property closed without drama. He signed the papers, collected his proceeds, significantly less than what he'd invested from what I heard, and disappeared from the narrative. I didn't feel triumphant exactly, just free. Like the last thread connecting me to that chapter of my life had finally been cut. The divorce finalized 2 weeks later. Attorney Renee had negotiated a clean split. I kept my business and everything I'd built post-separation. Marcus kept his remaining assets and his ego. No alimony either direction, no ongoing entanglements. We were strangers again, which felt appropriate. "How do you feel?" Jazz asked, the night the divorce became final. We were in my new apartment, a nice 2-bedroom in Virginia Highland that I'd furnished myself, every piece chosen because I actually liked it, not because it matched some aesthetic Marcus preferred. "Lighter," I said honestly. "Like I've been carrying weight I didn't realize was there. Is that weird?" "That's healthy. You were married to a man who made you smaller every day. Of course you feel lighter without him." My business continued to grow in ways that exceeded even my ambitious projections. The Williams development work led to 3 more major clients, all through referrals. My team expanded to 8 full-time consultants, plus a robust network of specialized contractors. We moved into a larger office space with actual conference rooms and a reception area. Revenue in our first full year hit $2.3 million. Not bad for a company that had started in my sister's guest room with nothing but a laptop and determination. But the real satisfaction came from the impact. Apex Innovations, my first client, had expanded to 12 cities and was in talks with venture capital firms about a Series B funding round. Patricia Monroe's Southern Roots Hospitality now had 8 locations, with plans for 5 more. The Williams Development Group's succession transition was so successful that other family businesses were reaching out, asking for similar help. I was building something that mattered, something that created real value, real jobs, real opportunity. It was almost a year to the day after walking out on Marcus when I got a call that brought everything full circle. "Ms. Carter, this is James Rodriguez from Urban Atlanta magazine. We're doing a feature on Atlanta's rising Black-owned businesses, and we'd love to include Scarter Consulting. Would you be interested in an interview?" Urban Atlanta was the city's premier business publication, read by everyone who mattered in the local economy. A feature article would be massive exposure. "Absolutely interested," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "When were you thinking?" The interview happened 2 weeks later. A photographer and journalist spending half a day at our office, talking to me and my team, reviewing our client success stories. The journalist, a sharp woman named Keisha Franklin, asked thoughtful questions about my journey, my vision, the challenges of building a consulting firm. "I have to ask," she said toward the end. "You left a 6-figure corporate job and a marriage to start this company. That's a lot of risk. What made you certain you could succeed?" I thought about Marcus's voice that rainy night. "You'll never make it without me." I wasn't certain, I admitted. I was terrified. But I was more afraid of spending my life playing small, of never knowing what I was actually capable of. Sometimes the scariest thing is also the right thing. Any regrets? Only that I didn't do it sooner. The article came out 6 weeks later. A 4-page spread with professional photos, client testimonials, financial success metrics. The headline read, "From Corporate America to Empire Building, How Simone Carter Built Atlanta's Hottest Consulting Firm." My phone exploded. Client inquiries, speaking invitations, interview requests. Jazz called, crying happy tears. "That's my sister! I'm so proud of you!" My parents drove up from Savannah, brought the magazine with them, and spent the weekend telling everyone they met about their daughter, the successful entrepreneur. My dad kept the article in his wallet, showed it to servers at restaurants, strangers in stores, anyone who would look. But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source. Patricia Monroe forwarded me an email thread. Marcus had apparently reached out to her, asking if she'd be interested in working with his firm on a new restaurant development project. Her response was simple. "Thank you, but I'm very satisfied with my current consultant. Simone Carter has been instrumental in my success, and I don't anticipate changing that relationship. Best of luck with your business." She'd CC'd me on the email, added a note. "Thought you'd want to see this. Man has some nerve." I smiled, saved the email in a folder I'd started calling receipts, and moved on with my day. Marcus was becoming irrelevant, a footnote in my origin story rather than an ongoing presence in my life. The business continued to evolve. We started specializing more intentionally. Organizational transformation for family businesses and minority-owned enterprises became our niche. We developed a methodology, created intellectual property, built a reputation as the go-to firm for companies navigating the intersection of culture and scale. I hired Jasmine part-time to develop our employee wellness programs. She brought healthcare expertise and genuine care for people that elevated our company culture. Kennedy had grown from administrative assistant to junior consultant, proving herself brilliant at market analysis. Michael and Yolanda had both become senior partners, each running their own project teams. We weren't just a consulting firm anymore. We were becoming an institution. It was 18 months after starting Scarter Consulting when I got invited to speak at the Emory Business School Alumni Conference. The same conference where I'd met Destiny Williams years earlier, back when I was still married to Marcus and dreaming of starting my own firm. The ballroom was packed, probably 300 people, a mix of successful alumni and current students. I stood backstage, reviewing my notes, trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach. "You're going to be great," Destiny said. She'd come to support me, sitting in the front row with several other clients who'd become friends. "I hope so. Public speaking isn't my strength. You've presented to boardrooms, led workshops for dozens of executives, pitched to potential clients. This is just more of the same. This is my peers. People who've known me since business school. Some of them probably remember me as Marcus Carter's wife, more than as Simone Carter the entrepreneur. Then show them who you really are," Destiny said simply. "Tell your truth." When they called my name, I walked onto that stage with my shoulders back and my head high, looked out at faces I recognized, classmates, professors, people who'd known me in my corporate days and my marriage days. And I told my story. Not a sanitized version, but the real one. About feeling trapped in corporate America. About a marriage that required me to be less than I was. About the terrifying moment of walking away from everything safe and familiar. About 7 hours in an ER waiting room that changed everything. About building a business from nothing. About proving wrong everyone who doubted me, including myself. "The truth is," I said, looking directly at the audience, "most of us spend our lives playing roles other people wrote for us. Daughter, student, employee, spouse. All these identities that come with expectations and limitations. And sometimes those roles are so comfortable, so familiar, that we forget to ask if they actually fit who we are and who we want to be." I talked about my former husband without naming him, about the moment he'd told me I'd never make it without him. The certainty in his voice, the dismissal of my capabilities. "He was wrong," I said simply. "Not just factually wrong, though my company's revenue speaks to that, but philosophically wrong. The assumption that I needed him, that his support and connections and resources were what would determine my success, completely misunderstood where success actually comes from." I clicked to the next slide, showing photos of my clients, my team, the impact we'd created. Success comes from solving real problems for real people, from bringing value to the world, from building something that matters. My ex-husband was focused on status and appearances and deal size. I'm focused on impact and transformation and sustainable growth. Those are fundamentally different measures of success, and they lead to fundamentally different outcomes. The speech ended with a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of people approached me, current students asking for advice, alumni wanting to connect, even a few professors who'd taught me saying they were proud of what I'd built. But the conversation that mattered most came from a young woman, probably mid-20s, who waited until the crowd thinned. "Ms. Carter, I'm Brianna, second-year MBA student. Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "How did you know that you should leave your husband, that you should start your business, that you weren't making a huge mistake?" "Because I'm in a relationship right now where my boyfriend keeps telling me I'm not ready for the career moves I want to make, that I should play it safe, and I don't know if he's right or if he's just scared." I thought about how to answer honestly without projecting my experience onto her situation. I didn't know, I said finally. Not with certainty. But I knew that staying felt like dying slowly. And I knew that my partner's certainty about my limitations said more about him than it did about me. The real question isn't whether you'll succeed if you take the risk. It's whether you can live with yourself if you don't try. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. Thank you. That's what I needed to hear. Watching her walk away, I thought about all the women who'd been in my position. Talented, capable, constrained by partners or families or societal expectations that told them to play small. How many brilliant businesses and ideas and innovations had been lost because someone listened to the voice saying, "You can't," instead of the voice saying, "What if I can?" That's when the idea hit me. Scarter Consulting was successful, growing, impactful. But maybe there was more I could do. Maybe there was a way to help not just established businesses, but the people trying to build them. Especially women like Brianna, like my former self, who needed more than business advice. They needed permission and support to believe in themselves. Over the next 6 months, I developed something new. The Scarter Accelerator. A program specifically designed for women and minority entrepreneurs in the early stages of building their businesses. Not just consulting, but a comprehensive support system, funding through a network of investors I'd cultivated, mentorship from successful founders, practical training in everything from accounting to marketing, and perhaps most importantly, a community of people who believed in each other's potential. We launched with a cohort of 12 entrepreneurs. I personally worked with each of them, remembering what it felt like to be starting out with more dreams than resources, more potential than proof. One of the entrepreneurs was a woman named Shanice, who'd left a toxic corporate environment to start a sustainable fashion line. Her designs were brilliant, but she was drowning in the operational complexity of manufacturing and distribution. "I keep hearing my old boss's voice in my head," she admitted during one of our sessions. "Telling me I'm not cut out for this, that I should just go back to my marketing job and forget about the fashion thing." "And what do you want to tell that voice?" I asked. "To shut up and watch me succeed." "Then let's make that happen." Working with the accelerator participants reminded me why I'd started this journey in the first place. It wasn't really about proving Marcus wrong, or showing the world what I could do. It was about unlocking potential, in my clients, in my team, and ultimately in myself. 2 years after starting Scarter Consulting, we were doing more than $5 million in annual revenue. We had 15 full-time employees, a robust contractor network, and a client roster that included some of Atlanta's most respected companies. The accelerator had graduated 2 cohorts, with a 90% success rate for participating businesses. And I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way I'd never been during my marriage or corporate career. It was a Tuesday afternoon when attorney Renee called with news I hadn't expected. "Simone, Marcus is trying to sue you." My stomach dropped. "For what?" "He's claiming that Scarter Consulting's success is partially due to contacts and knowledge you gained while married to him. He's arguing he's entitled to a portion of your company's value." I couldn't speak for a moment. The audacity of it. The man who'd told me I'd never make it without him was now trying to claim credit for my success. "Can he actually do that?" I finally asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He can try. Whether he'll succeed is another matter. Our divorce settlement was clear. You kept your post-separation business. He kept his assets. But Simone, this is going to be expensive to fight. He knows that. I think he's betting you'll settle just to avoid the legal costs and public battle." "He's betting wrong," I said firmly. "I didn't build this company with his help. I built it in spite of him. Every client, every success, every dollar earned, that's mine. I'm not giving him a single cent. Then we fight. But it's going to get ugly. He'll try to drag your reputation through the mud, claim you were planning this while still married, suggest you used his connections. Let him try. I have documentation of everything. Every client relationship I built post-divorce, every contract signed after I left. My business didn't exist while we were together, Renee. He has no claim to it. I agree. But judges can be unpredictable, especially when significant money is involved. We need to be prepared for this to take months, maybe longer. After hanging up, I sat in my office, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. My team was in the conference room, preparing for a client presentation. Kennedy was at her desk, fielding calls from potential new clients. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, was now under threat from a man who couldn't stand to see me succeed without him. Jazz was furious when I told her. He has some nerve. After everything he said, everything he did, now he wants to claim credit for your success. It's not really about the money, I said. I mean, it is, but it's more about control. Marcus needs to believe he's essential, that people can't succeed without him. My success challenges that narrative, so he's trying to rewrite history, make himself part of my story in a way that restores his sense of importance. What are you going to do? Fight, publicly if necessary. I'm done hiding from difficult truths or avoiding conflict to keep the peace. If Marcus wants a battle, he'll get one. The lawsuit became public knowledge within days. Atlanta's business community was small enough that word spread quickly. I started getting calls from journalists, from other business owners who'd dealt with similar situations, from women who'd left marriages and faced similar attempts to claim their post-divorce success. And I made a decision. I wouldn't hide this. I'd tell my story, completely and honestly, and trust that the truth would be compelling enough to stand on its own. I gave an interview to Urban Atlanta magazine, the same publication that had featured my company's success. This time, the article was titled, "When Success Becomes a Target, Simone Carter's Fight to Protect What She Built." I laid it all out. Marcus's dismissals during our marriage, his certainty I would fail, his attempts to undermine my business through gossip, and now his lawsuit claiming credit for success he'd actively tried to prevent. This isn't just about my case, I said in the interview. It's about a pattern where powerful men try to control women's success. When we're with them, they tell us we can't succeed without them. When we leave and prove them wrong, they try to claim credit for what we've built. It's a no-win situation designed to keep us dependent and diminished. The article went viral. Women shared their own stories of similar experiences. Business owners rallied around me, offering support and resources. Even some of Marcus's former colleagues reached out privately, confirming that yes, he'd been telling people my business was failing, that he'd been actively trying to damage my reputation. The court date was set for 4 months out. In the meantime, I focused on what I could control, running my company, serving my clients, growing my impact. The Accelerator's third cohort launched, this time with 20 participants. We doubled the size based on demand. Patricia Monroe's Southern Roots Hospitality expanded to 12 locations and was being featured in national food publications. Apex Innovations closed their Series B funding round at a valuation that made Terrell and Aisha millionaires. My clients were succeeding. My team was thriving. My company was growing. And Marcus? According to the rumors circulating through Atlanta's business community, his firm was struggling. The loss of the Buckhead property had been the beginning of a downward spiral. Other over-leveraged projects were failing. Clients were leaving. His reputation as a brilliant developer was being replaced by whispers of recklessness and poor judgment. I didn't take pleasure in his failures, but I did notice the irony. The man who'd been so certain I would fail was the one actually failing, while I was building an empire he'd dismissed as impossible. The court date arrived on a crisp October morning, exactly 2 years and 2 months after I'd walked out of our penthouse. I dressed in a sharp navy suit, arrived early, and sat with Renee as we waited for proceedings to begin. Marcus arrived with his own lawyer, looking worn. He'd lost more weight, had gray at his temples that hadn't been there before. We made eye contact briefly, and I saw something in his expression that looked almost like regret. But then his lawyer started talking, and the proceedings began. His case was built on smoke and mirrors, claims that I'd learned business practices from watching him, that I'd used his network to find clients, that my timing in starting the business right after our separation suggested I'd been planning it during the marriage. Renee systematically destroyed each argument, showed that every one of my clients came through my own professional network or referrals from my work, none through Marcus. Demonstrated that I'd been planning the business for 2 years before separation, but hadn't incorporated it until after I left. Provided testimony from my clients confirming that Marcus had never been part of my consulting work. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Hendricks, looked increasingly skeptical of Marcus's case. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth simply and clearly. About Marcus's dismissals, his certainty I would fail, his active attempts to undermine my business. About building Scarter Consulting with my own skills, my own clients, my own determination. Mr. Carter claims he's entitled to a portion of your company's value, Judge Hendricks said. What do you say to that? I say that my company exists because I left my marriage, not because of it. Every success I've achieved has been in spite of my ex-husband's lack of support, not because of it. He told me I'd never make it without him. I proved him wrong. Now he wants to claim credit for being wrong. That's not how this works. The courtroom was silent. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Hendricks waved him off. I've heard enough, she said. Mr. Carter, your claim has no legal merit. The business was incorporated after the divorce proceedings began, was built entirely with your ex-wife's post-separation efforts, and shows no connection to marital assets or your professional network. Your lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Additionally, I'm awarding attorney's fees to Ms. Carter. You will pay her legal costs for defending against this frivolous claim. Marcus looked stunned. His lawyer tried to argue, but the judge shut him down. Furthermore, Judge Hendricks continued, I want to say something for the record. Ms. Carter, I've reviewed your business's growth, read about your work in the community, seen the impact you're having. This is exactly the kind of entrepreneurship our city needs. Mr. Carter, instead of trying to tear down your ex-wife's success, perhaps you should focus on rebuilding your own reputation and business. This case is closed. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt something release that I hadn't known I was carrying. It wasn't just about winning the case. It was about having the truth validated by someone with authority. About having a judge look at the evidence and confirm what I'd always known. I'd built this success myself. Marcus caught up with me in the hallway outside. His lawyer had disappeared, probably to avoid the awkward conversation. Simone, wait. I turned, and for the first time in years, I saw him clearly. Not as the powerful man who'd intimidated me, not as the husband who'd diminished me, but as someone who'd built his identity on being superior to everyone around him, and was now facing the consequences of that worldview. That was humiliating, he said quietly. Yes, it was, and unnecessary. You could have just let me go, Marcus. Let me build my business in peace. But you couldn't stand that I was succeeding without you, so you tried to claim credit for my work. How did you think that was going to end? I thought... He stopped, shook his head. I don't know what I thought. That you'd settle, maybe. That you'd give me something just to make me go away. That I could salvage some sense of control over a situation that's completely out of my control. I'm not giving you anything. Not money, not credit, not access to my life. We're done, Marcus. We've been done for 2 years. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can move on. I know. And Simone? For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. The way I treated you during our marriage. The things I said when you were starting your business. This lawsuit. You deserved better. Yes, I did. But I gave myself better. That's the part you never understood. I didn't need you to believe in me, or support me, or validate me. I just needed to believe in myself. And once I did that, once I stopped letting your opinion matter more than my own, everything changed. You've built something remarkable, he said. I can admit that now. I should have admitted it 2 years ago. It wouldn't have changed anything. The problem wasn't that you didn't believe in me, though you didn't. The problem was that you needed me to be less than you so you could feel important. That's not a partnership, Marcus. That's a power dynamic disguised as a marriage. He nodded slowly. I'm seeing that now. Too late, obviously. But I'm seeing it. Then take that lesson into your next relationship. Let whoever you're with be fully themselves. Celebrate their success instead of feeling threatened by it. Be a partner instead of a competitor. What about you? Are you seeing anyone? I smiled. That's none of your business. But I'm happy, Marcus. Genuinely happy. And that's all you need to know. I walked away from him for the final time, leaving behind 2 years of conflict and drama, and his desperate attempts to remain relevant in my story. Outside the courthouse, my team was waiting. Kennedy, Michael, Yolanda, even Jazz, who'd taken the day off from the hospital to be there. They erupted in cheers when I gave them the thumbs up. He lost? Kennedy asked eagerly. Completely. Dismissed with prejudice, and he has to pay our legal fees. That's what I'm talking about. Michael high-fived Yolanda, both of them grinning. We went out for lunch, a long celebration at a nice restaurant where I picked up the tab for everyone. Toasted to victory, to justice, to the principle that you can't claim credit for someone else's work. But more than that, we celebrated something bigger. The 2-year anniversary of Scarter Consulting. 2 years since I'd walked away from everything safe and familiar. 2 years since I'd bet on myself when no one else would. Speech, Jazz called out, and the rest of the table joined in. I stood up, glass raised. 2 years ago, I was sitting in a penthouse in Buckhead, married to a man who told me I'd never make it without him. Today, I'm standing here with a company doing over $5 million in revenue, a team of brilliant people I'm proud to work with, and a court ruling confirming that I built all of this myself. Cheers around the table. But the real victory isn't the money or the court case, or even proving Marcus wrong. The real victory is that I like my life now. I wake up excited about the work we're doing. I'm proud of the impact we're having. I'm surrounded by people who see me, value me, and challenge me to keep growing. That's success. That's what matters. More cheers, and then Kennedy added, to Simone, who showed all of us what's possible when you bet on yourself. To Simone, everyone echoed. As the celebration continued around me, I thought about the journey that had led here. The broken arm and 7-hour wait that had catalyzed everything. The moment of walking away from security and into uncertainty. The early days of grinding, hustling, building something from nothing. The slow accumulation of success, one client at a time, one win at a time. And I thought about all the women who were still sitting where I'd been 2 years ago, in relationships or jobs or situations that made them small, listening to voices telling them they couldn't succeed, they weren't ready, they'd never make it without someone else's approval or support. My phone buzzed with an email. Another inquiry from a potential accelerator participant, a woman who'd read about my court case and wanted to know if it was really possible to leave a controlling relationship and build a successful business. I typed back, not only possible, necessary. When you're ready, we're here. That evening, back in my office, I looked at the wall where we'd started hanging client success stories. Photos and headlines documenting the impact our work had created. Businesses saved, jobs created, dreams realized. This was my legacy. Not the court victory or the revenue numbers, but the proof that betting on yourself, even when everyone else doubts you, even when the statistics are against you, even when you're terrified, can lead somewhere extraordinary. Marcus had said I'd never make it without him. He'd been catastrophically, magnificently wrong. But more importantly, I'd proven something to myself, that I was capable of far more than I'd ever allowed myself to imagine. That playing small to make someone else comfortable was a betrayal of my own potential. That the scariest thing, walking away from security and into the unknown, was also the thing that set me free. 6 months after Marcus told me I'd fail, my company had bought his house. 2 years later, I'd built an empire he couldn't even comprehend. But the real triumph wasn't his failure or my success in comparison to his. It was that I'd discovered who I actually was underneath all the roles and expectations and limitations I'd accepted. I was Simone Carter, entrepreneur, consultant, mentor, builder of businesses and dreams. I was someone who took big risks, who fought for what mattered, who refused to accept anyone else's ceiling as my own. And I'd built a life that was entirely, authentically, triumphantly mine. That was worth more than any house, any court victory, any measure of success Marcus could understand. That was everything. The year following the court victory brought changes I hadn't anticipated. The publicity from the case, a successful Black woman defending her business against her ex-husband's claims, resonated far beyond Atlanta. I was invited to speak at conferences across the country, featured in national business publications, even asked to testify before a congressional committee about barriers facing women entrepreneurs. Scarter Consulting grew to 23 employees. We opened a second office in Charlotte to handle our expanding regional client base. Revenue hit $8 million. The accelerator graduated its 5th cohort with a 95% success rate for participating businesses. But the growth that mattered most was personal. I'd spent 3 years building my business. It was time to build my life. I started dating again, cautiously at first, then with more openness. Mostly disasters, a few pleasant evenings, nothing serious. I was okay with that. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defining myself through a relationship. I was complete on my own. It was at a charity gala in late spring when I met David Chen, a civil rights attorney who'd made his name fighting employment discrimination cases. We were seated at the same table, and within 5 minutes of conversation, I was genuinely laughing at his self-deprecating humor and sharp observations about Atlanta's nonprofit scene. "You're Simone Carter," he said during the dinner. "I read about your court case. That judge's ruling was beautiful, not just legally sound, but morally clear. You followed the case?" "I follow cases involving economic justice and gender equity. Yours hit both. Plus, I have clients who've worked with your firm. They speak highly of you." We talked through dinner, exchanged numbers, and 3 days later had our first date. Then a second. Then a third. David was different from Marcus in fundamental ways. He listened more than he talked, asked questions because he was genuinely interested in the answers, celebrated my success without feeling threatened by it. "Tell me about your business," he said over dinner one evening, months into our relationship. Not, "Tell me about your day," or "How's work going?" but genuinely wanting to understand what I'd built. I told him about our latest project, a manufacturing company in Birmingham transitioning from second to third generation leadership, about the complexity of balancing tradition with innovation, about helping families navigate difficult conversations about succession and control. "That sounds incredibly fulfilling," he said when I finished. "Being part of those pivotal moments in companies' lives." It is, though it's also frustrating sometimes. People resist change even when they know it's necessary. Family dynamics make everything more complicated. There are days I want to just hand them a solution and walk away. But you don't. But I don't. Because real transformation doesn't come from consultants imposing solutions. It comes from helping clients discover their own path forward. David smiled. "You're really good at this, aren't you? Not just the technical consulting work, but the human element. Understanding what people actually need, not just what they say they need." It was such a simple observation, but it touched something deep. Marcus had never really understood what I did or why it mattered. David got it immediately. "I try to be," I said. "Every business problem is really a people problem underneath. If you solve the technical issue but ignore the human dynamics, nothing actually changes." Our relationship developed slowly, built on genuine compatibility rather than chemistry alone. He met Jazz, who approved immediately. "Finally, someone who actually deserves you," she whispered, when David was out of earshot. I met his family, his parents who'd immigrated from Taiwan, his sister who was a doctor, his brother who taught high school. They were warm and welcoming, and I relaxed into their acceptance in ways I never had with Marcus's family. But I was also careful, protective of the independence I'd fought so hard to establish. David noticed. "You're holding back," he said one evening as we walked through Piedmont Park. "Not emotionally, but practically. You won't let me help with anything, won't accept support even when it would make your life easier. Why?" I thought about how to explain years of being made dependent, of having my capabilities questioned, of leaving a marriage where my partner's support came with strings attached. "I spent 8 years with someone who used his support as a way to control me," I said finally, "who made me feel like I needed him, like I couldn't function without his help. It took enormous effort to break free from that dynamic. And now I'm maybe overcorrecting, assuming all support comes with conditions." "Not all support comes with conditions," David said gently. "Sometimes people help because they care, not because they want power over you. I know that intellectually. But emotionally, I'm still learning to trust it. Then we'll take our time. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people figuring out how to be together without losing themselves." It was exactly what I needed to hear. The accelerator's 6th cohort included a woman named Tamika, who reminded me painfully of my former self. Brilliant, capable, trapped in a marriage with someone who undermined her at every turn. Her business idea, a platform connecting Black mental health professionals with clients in underserved communities, was exactly the kind of socially impactful venture I loved supporting. But her husband was sabotaging her efforts, missing childcare obligations so she couldn't attend meetings, refusing to contribute to household expenses so she couldn't invest in her business, telling their friends and family she was having a midlife crisis and neglecting their children. "I don't know if I can do this," Tamika admitted during one of our mentoring sessions. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I should just focus on my family and forget about this business dream." I saw myself in her, the doubt, the guilt, the internalized voice saying she was being selfish for wanting more. "Can I tell you something?" I said. 3 years ago, I was you. Same situation, same doubts. My husband told me I'd never make it without him, that starting my own business was delusional. He was so certain I would fail that he tried to convince me not to try. What did you do? I left, walked out with nothing but my laptop and my determination, built this company from my sister's guest room. And you know what happened? My husband's business failed while mine succeeded, because his certainty about my limitations was never based on my actual capabilities. It was based on his need to feel superior. But what if I try and fail? Tamika's voice was small. What if he's right? Then you fail and learn and try again. But Tamika, the real failure is never trying. It's letting someone else's fear and insecurity dictate your choices. It's looking back at 60 and wondering what you might have accomplished if you'd just been brave enough to bet on yourself. She graduated from the accelerator 6 months later, with a functional platform, seed funding, and divorce papers filed. Her business is now operating in 15 cities. Her ex-husband is, from what I hear, still telling people she made a huge mistake. Meanwhile, she's changing lives and building wealth. Funny how that works. It was 3 years to the day after leaving Marcus when I got a call that brought everything full circle in an unexpected way. "Simone Carter." The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "This is Denise Shaw from the National Association of Women Business Owners. We'd like to offer you our Entrepreneur of the Year award. It comes with a $50,000 grant to invest in your business or donate to a cause of your choosing." I was speechless. Entrepreneur of the Year from a national organization. Recognition that went beyond local success to validation at the highest level. "The selection committee was particularly impressed by your accelerator program," Denise continued. "The success rate of your participants, the focus on underserved communities, the way you're creating systemic change rather than just individual success stories. It's exactly the kind of entrepreneurship we want to celebrate." The award ceremony was in Chicago. I brought my whole team, turned it into a company retreat. We celebrated together, and I used my acceptance speech to talk about the importance of supporting women entrepreneurs, especially those leaving situations that made them small. 3 years ago, I said from that stage, someone told me I'd never make it without him. Today, I'm standing here with an award recognizing exactly what I built after leaving. To every woman who's been told she can't, she shouldn't, she won't, I want you to know that those limitations are about the person saying them, not about you. Bet on yourself. Build the life you deserve. Prove them wrong by proving yourself right. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for me. It was for every woman in that room who'd faced similar doubts and fought past them anyway. After the ceremony, my phone was flooded with messages. Clients, colleagues, former classmates, even complete strangers sharing their own stories of leaving limiting situations and building something new. But the message that stopped me cold came from an unexpected source. Marcus, congratulations on the award. You've built something remarkable. I was wrong about everything. I hope you know that now. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond with something cutting, a final reminder of all the ways he'd tried to tear me down. But mostly, I just felt done. Thank you, I typed back simply. Nothing more needed to be said. David found me on the hotel balcony later that night, looking out at the Chicago skyline. You okay? Marcus texted, congratulated me on the award. How do you feel about that? Indifferent, mostly. Which I guess is the healthiest response. He doesn't have the power to hurt me anymore. He's just someone I used to know who happened to be catastrophically wrong about me. David wrapped his arms around me from behind. You know what I admire most about you? Not your business success, though that's impressive. It's your courage to keep choosing yourself. To keep building the life you deserve even when people try to convince you to settle for less. I turned in his arms, looked at this man who saw me clearly and celebrated that rather than feeling threatened by it. Thank you for being someone I don't have to fight against. Someone who makes choosing myself and choosing us feel compatible instead of contradictory. Always, he said simply. We stood there watching the city lights, and I thought about the journey that had led here. From that rainy night in Atlanta 3 years ago, to this Chicago balcony. From a woman who believed she needed someone else's approval to thrive, to someone who'd built an empire on her own terms. Marcus had said I'd never make it without him. 6 months after those words, my company had bought his house. 3 years later, I was being recognized as Entrepreneur of the Year, while he was rebuilding from the ruins of his own overconfidence. But the real victory wasn't his downfall or my success in comparison. It was that I'd discovered I didn't need victory over him. I just needed victory over my own doubts, my own fears, my own internalized limitations. The award ceremony weekend ended, and we flew back to Atlanta, back to my company, my team, my life. Everything I'd built brick by brick from nothing but determination and skill. Monday morning, I walked into our office, our larger, bustling office full of brilliant people doing meaningful work, and felt deep satisfaction. This was real. This was mine. This was the life I'd chosen and fought for and created. Kennedy met me at the door with coffee and a schedule. Welcome back, boss. You have a new client consultation at 10. The Birmingham manufacturing project needs your review by noon, and the accelerator applications for next cohort came in. We got 250 applications for 20 spots. 250? Your acceptance speech went viral. Everyone wants to be part of what we're building. Everyone wanted to be part of what I was building. Not because of Marcus's connections or anyone else's support, but because I'd created something valuable enough that people sought it out. That afternoon, during the new client consultation, I recognized a familiar dynamic. The potential client, a woman named Robin, was brilliant and capable, but kept undermining her own expertise. I'm not sure I'm ready for this, she said, talking about expanding her business. My husband thinks I should wait another year, make sure everything's really stable before growing. What do you think? I asked. I think I've been waiting for the right time for 3 years, and it's never going to feel perfect. But he's probably right. Stop, I interrupted gently. I'm going to ask you a hard question, and I want you to answer honestly. If your husband's opinion disappeared tomorrow, if you only had to consider your own judgment, would you expand your business? She thought for a long moment. Then, quietly, yes, I know I'm ready. I know the business can handle it. I've gotten used to needing his approval before making big decisions. Then let me tell you something that might change your life. His approval is nice to have, but not necessary to have. You're capable of making excellent decisions on your own. And the longer you wait for permission from someone who has a vested interest in you staying small, the longer you'll postpone the success you're capable of achieving. Robin looked at me with something like recognition. You sound like you've been there. I have. And I wasted years seeking approval from someone who could never give it because my success threatened his sense of superiority. Don't make my mistake, Robin. If you're ready, you're ready. His doubts are about him, not you. We talked for another hour, and by the end, Robin had decided to move forward with her expansion plans, with or without her husband's blessing. After she left, Yolanda poked her head in my office. Another woman leaving a limiting relationship. Probably. She hasn't named it yet, but I recognize the patterns. You're becoming a therapist as much as a consultant. Business problems are people problems, I said, echoing what I'd told David. Can't solve one without addressing the other. That evening, David and I had dinner at my apartment. I'd cooked, something I'd rediscovered I enjoyed after years of Marcus's criticism of my culinary skills. The meal was simple, but good, and we ate on my balcony watching the Atlanta sunset. Penny for your thoughts, David said, watching me. I'm thinking about how far I've come. 3 years ago, I was terrified I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Now I'm here, doing work I love, with someone who actually sees me, living a life that's completely mine. It feels almost surreal. You earned every bit of it. I know. And that's the part that feels best. Not that things worked out despite leaving Marcus, but that they worked out because I finally bet on myself, because I stopped waiting for permission or approval or validation from anyone else. David reached across the table, took my hand. For what it's worth, I'm grateful he was wrong about you. If he'd been right, if you'd actually needed him to succeed, I'd never have met this version of you. The woman who built an empire from scratch. The one who changes lives and creates opportunities. The one who's completely, authentically herself. I squeezed his hand, feeling the truth of his words settle over me. Later that night, alone with my thoughts, I pulled out my old journal from 3 years ago. Found the entry I'd written the night I left Marcus. I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of living a life half-lived, of never knowing what I'm actually capable of achieving. Marcus said I'll never make it without him. Maybe he's right, but maybe, just maybe, he's catastrophically wrong. Time will tell which of us understood my potential better, him or me. I picked up my pen, added a new entry below. 3 years later, he was catastrophically, spectacularly, magnificently wrong. And I was catastrophically, spectacularly, magnificently right about myself. Turns out, betting on yourself when no one else will is the bravest and most rewarding thing you can do. Everything I have, everything I've built, everything I've become, I earned it by refusing to accept anyone else's limitations as my own. Marcus said I'd never make it without him. 6 months later, my company bought his house. 3 years later, I'm Entrepreneur of the Year, while he's rebuilding from ruins. But that's not the victory that matters. The victory is that I like myself now. I respect myself. I believe in myself. And that belief created everything else. To anyone reading this who's where I was 3 years ago, scared, doubting, listening to someone tell you what you can't do, bet on yourself. Take the leap. Build the life you deserve. The voice telling you that you can't is always wrong when it comes from fear and control. Your voice, the one telling you, what if I can? That's the one worth listening to. I made it. You can too. Not because I'm special, but because betting on yourself is the most powerful force in the world when you finally decide to do it. I closed the journal, feeling the weight of 3 years of transformation settle into clarity and peace. Marcus had said I'd never make it without him. He'd been so certain, so dismissive, so wrong. And I'd proven him wrong in the most satisfying way possible. By building something he couldn't even comprehend, by achieving success he couldn't imagine, by becoming a version of myself I hadn't known existed. But more than that, I'd proven something to myself. That I was capable of far more than I'd ever allowed myself to believe. That playing small to accommodate someone else's insecurity was a betrayal of my own potential. That walking away from security and into uncertainty was the scariest and best decision I'd ever made. 6 months after Marcus told me I'd never make it without him, my company bought his house. 3 years after he told me I'd never make it without him, I'd built an empire. But the real triumph wasn't his failure or my success in comparison to him. The real triumph was that I'd become someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I'd already proven everything I needed to prove to the only person whose opinion truly mattered, myself.